Sander, Jonny, Gillian and Laura to come on stage and we find out a little bit how these new projects want to bridge research with policy and practice. So I guess many of you will be familiar with these round of projects, let's say, with this program that is behind most of these projects, namely behind Grow Green, Connecting Nature and UNaLab, which was one of those first big funding programs of the European Commission to deal with nature-based solutions. At that point, focusing on water and climate resilience. And there were similar programs, and this is the project that has to do, that is called here Naturevation, which was a different funding line, more focusing on governance, financing, business models, environmental impact assessments, and so on. So we would assume these projects will be grappling with similar circumstances as we had to deal with in our project Green Search, and we wanted to see how maybe some of the lessons learned in Green Search can also potentially still inform the new projects just freshly started, just arranging their processes. Sander could actually have been on stage even beforehand in the first round because he was also had one of these central roles as a facilitator for the Edinburgh Learning Alliance, and so he can now, and he has also done a lot of evaluation on this process. So now actually being back to his home country and working with the University of Utrecht, you have a chance to see in how far you can actually use that knowledge. Before we are going into this conversation, we have a quick look at what these projects are doing really quick, and just focusing on this particular issue that we are dealing with here. How do we bring together researchers, policymakers, practitioners into a meaningful and effective conversation to achieve some sort of an impact? How is that supposed to happen in Naturevation? And maybe you can always say one sentence about yourself, which is one sentence.
Okay. So my name is Sander van Jagt. I still work at Forest Research. I keep forgetting, but I still work for Forest Research 1 day a week. But I live now in Utrecht working on the Naturevation project for the University of Utrecht. Very briefly, Naturevation is nature-based innovation. It's an acronym. So we're looking at innovative ways of how we can green cities. And there's a number of work packages. So we are collecting, in work package 2, we're collecting 1,000 examples of nature-based solutions across Europe. And we're going to spatially analyze that data. In work package 3, we're looking at advanced ways of measuring the impacts of nature-based solutions. In work package 4, we're looking at upscaling potentially of these nature-based solutions and pathways to innovation from inside out. So we're really visiting some of these nature-based solutions and preparing in-depth case studies. Whereas in work package 5, we're engaging with some of the sectors that maybe are not usually engaged in this kind of research, such as development and finance sector, and we're really looking at systemic constraints that some of these nature-based solution interventions may be faced with. And we also have the engagement with stakeholders, which is the focus of work package 6, engagement and outreach. So yeah, these stakeholder platforms are called URIPs, Urban Regional Innovation Platforms, I think. And we have 6 of them. And it's a dynamic slide, so if you press the button, we can see the 6 cities. Can we go? Yeah, there we are. So that's Newcastle, the lovely city of Utrecht, of course Malmö, because we needed to include the most innovative city, Leipzig, Chur, if I pronounce it correctly, and Barcelona.
And you have not, and we have to watch a little bit the time, and I have to warn you, I think we'll bite a little bit into the next round of sessions. I hope this is allowed. But let us really focus now on our particular theme, this interaction. You are the facilitator of the Utrecht, sort of, I don't know how you call it there,
The
platform, Europe, the Utrecht Europe. Any plans for how you will be doing that? Anything that you got out from Green Search?
Yes, I think there's already a few things I quite like in the program, the Nativation program. And that's, first of all, we have a schedule of regular meetings. So we know we'll be meeting our partners 4 times per year. And there's already a preliminary topic set for each of these meetings based on what's happening in the research around that period. So that's, I think, a really good start, because we know from Green Search that initiating the process was perhaps the most challenging stage. Initiating, getting the right people around the table, deciding about a topic that you want to follow for the 4 years. And this really, encourages you to get started, I feel. And then after each of these meetings, we've been requested to produce reports. So we're reporting on each of the meetings, and each of the Europes is doing that. So we know what's happening in the other Europes, and we have regular meetings also with the Europe facilitators to discuss progress. So there's strong coordination, I feel. And I think another great feature of the project is that the cities now have funding, which wasn't the case in Green Search. And so they are much more motivated, I feel, to actively contribute. So we're not having to first convince them that doing this is the right thing. And also they can budget and allocate time to the process. And I think they are really key partners in the Europes. And so in this project they are formally responsible for coordinating the Europe process. And we're supporting them rather than the other way around. And I think that really works so far. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, that's good to know, and certainly something that we also heard in our evaluation. More meetings are needed, more face-to-face encounters, start the process early. We heard from Anders just now in the previous round, so it looks promising, I think, to maybe, go beyond some of the weaknesses that we have encountered in Green Search, maybe. So, small pictures on your projects, and then my questions. Grow Green. This is Jonny.
Thank you. I'm Jonny Sadler. I'm the Programme Director of Manchester's Climate Change Agency. We're responsible for facilitating the delivery of Manchester's climate change strategy to 2050. And my kind of personal thinking, I suppose, has pervaded the Grow Green project. The agency led its development on behalf of the city and the consortium. And my experience really goes back to when I left university as an environmental science graduate, and I guess I was a little bit frustrated, really. I wanted to learn how to save the world in quite a practical way, and what I left with was a lot of theoretical knowledge, but which wasn't necessarily that practical. So I've always wanted to find a way to work with, starting with the local universities, to be able to apply what you learn there in a more practical way, and provide students and academics with an opportunity to ground and contextualize their work in such a way that it can be practically useful. And I suppose I've also had a kind of selfish motivation in my current role and my previous role, whereby there's currently 3 people in the agency. I previously had a team of 10 at the City Council. And whenever I go to the university, we're always outnumbered at least 10 to 1. There's 70,000 students in Manchester, 30,000 academics. So if we can tap into even a tiny proportion of that resource, there's a huge opportunity. So that thinking pervaded the Grow Green and other projects that we do. And I suppose Grow Green really is the first big opportunity we've had to kind of apply that thinking, not just in Manchester, but in the other cities. So let me just briefly explain to you who they are and why we're working with them. We've got 3 pairings of European cities, as you can see there. They're paired in terms of their main climate risk. So Manchester is working with Brest in France on flood risk, Valencia and Zadar are working together on heat stress, and Wrocław and Modena on both of those risks, and we also have a Chinese city in there as well. And I suppose what we've tried to do is really build on the learning that's come out of Green Surge and other projects, and just reconfigure that relationship between cities and universities really, so that those cities are the ones driving the project. They were the ones that shaped the initial concept, they were the ones who invited the partners in, and the role for the universities and the other technical partners is really one of support for the cities. So it's a different relationship to the one I think we've seen in Green Surge, and fundamentally, if the project isn't responding to the challenges and opportunities in cities, it's not going to be a success. So that's right at the heart of the way that the concept's been put together, the way the governance is put together, and hopefully it's going to be the basis of a successful project.
So the cities would be right in the driving seat and sort of invite research to also respond to their circumstances, their needs, their questions. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, how do we continue? We are moving over to connecting nature, and Glasgow is one of the front-runner cities, so a big responsibility, and you will be in the limelight for quite a while. How has this been organized? How will you meet researchers in your project?
Okay, I'll start by saying I'm Gillian. I'm a town planner with the City Council, and what you've got is a wee bit of a slice of what Glasgow is putting in. So there are three lead cities in Connecting Nature who have been tasked with giving you, I suppose, open space projects at different scales. So we have Genk in Belgium who are doing, I suppose, a city park or a water park. We have Poznan in Poland who are doing a green network in a quarter of their city. And Glasgow being Glasgow, we decided we weren't going to throw in a physical project, so we've thrown in our open space strategy and our opportunity mapping. So what we mean by that, and what you're getting a glimpse of up on the screen, is the way that we're probably going to challenge the researchers, because we're not giving them a physical entity to investigate or research. We're giving them a concept, and we're giving a concept that we hope they can help work with us to develop how we take those opportunities that we're identifying through GIS mapping and looking at the quality, quantity, accessibility of our open spaces, and throwing in a lot of climatic mapping that we have around the council, whether that's energy mapping, whether that's vacant derelict land, whether that's flood alleviation, whether that's heat, whether that's air quality, and asking the experts in those areas what are the opportunities they're looking for, what do they want spaces and places to do. And then from a Glasgow perspective, we're looking at who can run with those opportunities, because it's not necessarily us. We don't have the resources and we don't have the money. That hopefully will give researchers the three different scales to look at. Whether that will work or not is debatable. We've only had 4 months going, and our key partner in Work Package 1, which Glasgow is leading with Spain, is the University of A Coruña, and they went on holiday for the summer. While the rest of us carried on, so they vanished into a black hole. So we'll see how we go. We'll see how the researchers can deal with a concept that isn't a physical on the ground bit of ground, which possibly in 5 years' time will be hundreds of bits of things on the ground. So it will give them a lot more to research. And we're hoping that we can use some of the technology and the technical smart city expertise that some of our partners have to look at different ways of getting that information out. So I suppose I should have said Connecting Nature is being led by Trinity University in Dublin, but both their business school and their kind of geography environment school. So it is about the kind of business developing new ways, looking at the actual costs. So if any of you were in one of the workshops yesterday where Max from the Green Network in Clyde Valley was talking about the cost of providing the green network, it's looking at that cost that you can't really pin down. And we have 8 follower cities across Europe, plus a couple of Chinese ones.
Right, thanks a lot. I think you had a second slide just to show a few pictures.
That's just Glasgow.
Okay,
just give you an idea.
Glasgow.
Sorry.
It's very attractive. Next time we'll be there. So, Laura, in the project UNaLab. You are part of the coordinating team, I understand, on behalf of VTT, here as the coordinator of UNaLab.
Yeah, I'm here on behalf of UNaLab. Our coordinator is Mimu Eriksson and from VTT. Tom Haxwell is also here in the audience, so feel free to direct all the hard questions to Tom from Fraunhofer. I'm actually coordinating the work package where we're looking at the implementation of urban living labs in cities as nature-based solution demonstration areas and green innovation hubs in our front-runner cities. So I should actually talk to the slide since it's up here and we're all looking at it, but our projects are all quite very similar because we're all answering the same call. Some of the things that are slightly different are we have 3 front-runner cities and we don't have specific pairs with our follower cities. So our front-runner cities are Eindhoven, Genova, and Tampere. Followers are Stavanger, Kastellon, Cannes, Praha, and Başakşehir. And we've actually are in the process of developing a buddy system to help with replication and upscaling from the front-runners to the followers. Like the other projects, we're driven by the challenges that we all face, and one of the things that has come across very clearly is the role that we are playing, which has been developed in GreenSurge and other projects, is as knowledge brokers, and I see that as going forward that it's going to be very successful for us. So it's nice to hear that. I also want to very quickly say thank you to GreenSurge, to everyone here for inviting us, because this has been tremendously beneficial. It's one thing to read about what's been done in previous projects and quite something else, very inspiring to actually talk to the people who have done it and to see some of the green infrastructure in place.
Okay, thank you. Interesting. Okay, this is a few words my colleague will add later, I understand. Thanks a lot for now. Unfortunately, we are pressed with time because I think there would be many things that we could talk about in more detail. And you are just at the beginning of your journey, and ICLEI is involved in 2 of the projects, so maybe we see each other again then latest, in my case, in final conferences or so, and maybe briefly before my retirement I should make it maybe to all these final conferences and see whether you've done any better than we did in GreenSurge. So I hope this conference will also inspire you, and there's a lot of good reading material too about our approaches and how this turned out in practice. So Alice, I would then ask you on stage for maybe a brief summary and a few final words. Thank you.
Yes, it's actually quite difficult to summarize it, but I think quite a few aspects which we have sort of discussed with the GreenSurge cities, but also which came out in the evaluation process, have been touched upon in the first round, but also in the second round. And as Sandra said, I think the new round of projects is a bit better equipped by having the cities as partners, or actually as leaders of the project, which I think will make quite a bit of difference. And as I already said beforehand, we really could only put small little spotlights on different lessons learned from. You have to start before you write the proposal, really to sit down with the cities and come up with a joint research agenda, as it was put in the evaluation process. Don't label it maybe research, but rather joint knowledge creation, which I think is also gives it a new perspective, a new way of approaching it. But of course it helps cities which are maybe not this Learning Alliance process, which are maybe not have done anything with it, to sort of establish actually networks, for example. I think that was the case in Barbare a lot, so you can now use these networks to continue with the promoting green infrastructure. And there are lots of different things. On the one hand, we looked at sort of how researchers perceived the process. On the other hand, how cities and non-governmental organizations perceive the process, but also what the role is of the facilitators. And it's pretty clear that you need facilitators, and this process actually helps both sides to get together on frequently, to really you have to ask questions. What do you actually want from this? What can I offer? Because particularly in big project consortia, where you know there are 30 other partners and you vaguely know what they're doing, but you don't really know what they're doing, to sort of really ask questions, what can you do for me, or what can I do for you? So as you can see, there are really lots of different aspects which we found out and which we managed to learn together really in the Learning Alliance process. And we want to take the conversation further in two ways. On the one hand, building up also on the session and conversations we've had now, but also throughout the 2 days of conference, to develop a brochure which should help others who want to set up research city collaboration within mainly European, but also other projects, to sort of have a kind of not like a checklist maybe, but at least to keep in mind some of the most vital points to consider, so that these learning alliances or collaboration processes are really fruitful. And we will publish that in October. It will be available on the Green Search website. And we, of course, also, because we can't come together anymore face-to-face, we will organize a webinar on the 17th of October at 2:30 p.m. Central European Time. We'll, of course, promote that on the Green Search website, but I think hopefully also be able to share it with all conference participants. And we will just sort of take the conversation on that further, and then look to you for projects and the other projects of this sort of calls dealing with nature-based solutions, and see how you do it. So thank you very much for joining us for this post-lunch session. Thank you, Barbara, for also putting this together, and of course to the Green Search Cities to being part of this, or we were able to support you in this, and you were patient enough with all of our questions and guidance and all of these things, and of course for you to come all the way to Malmö. Thank you.